Hi, my name's Bob Grenier and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, and it is my deep honour and pleasure to be here with Mr. George Hathaway of Hathaway Consulting in this incredibly dead and special room. Tell me something about this room we're in, George.
The room is actually, hello, it's George Hathaway. The room is a specially constructed radio frequency anechoic chamber that is filled with cones, as you can see. When we at Hathaway Research, the old company was called Hathaway Consulting, this is now Hathaway Research, are doing special pulse power projects where we're radiating a lot of energy, or we're doing very fine and delicate radio frequency or otherwise measurements in here, and we don't want external radio frequency from messing up the measurements.
So I've been here for a few days, and George has been very kind to show me around. There's a lot of cool equipment here. You just would not believe it. But I've seen you show me some things which I'd like to maybe have another segment on. You showed me something that was looking at Ken Shoulder's Evos at one point.
Yes, we can do that later, perhaps.
Yeah, and there was another device which may be the most suitable device, I think, for assessing the output from George Eagley's
I can
so-called device.
Yeah, show you some of those too.
Okay, so let's go to it. What have we got in front of us here?
These are samples that were taken during the time or were made by John Hutchison during the time that Alex Pizarro and myself, under the company called Pharos Technologies, were in business with trying to understand what the scientific background and basis was for what John was able to do. And this was in the late 80s and 90s, and Pharos Technologies was able to garner some funds to allow us to do some analyses on the samples that were, in the, what we call it LADS, L-A-D-S technique, which was the lift and destruction or disruption system. So we're concentrating here on the disruption part of the LADS system, L-A-D-S. The lifting part is something that we can't really show here, although I can show one of the devices that, or several of them, which actually lifted. A lot of the time I was not available for John's demonstrations back in the 90s simply because of distance. I lived, and I still do, near Toronto, and John was in Vancouver, and Alex Pizarro, my business partner in Pharos Technologies, was in Vancouver. So he witnessed much more than I did.
And to put that in perspective for the people that come from Europe, those places are very far apart, right?
Yeah, and it takes a while. And as you recall, perhaps, John's hit rate, you might say, was very slow, or very minimal. So if I would come out, or anyone would come hoping to see something in a day, anything, you'd have like a 50-50 chance of actually seeing something in a day. Otherwise, you're sitting around waiting and waiting while snap, crackle, lighting.
But you actually did see something.
Yes.
And you saw something with
I'll describe that.
Yes.
So that's also one of the reasons why I wasn't there all the time, because I'd have to shuttle out and nothing happens. But Alex, fortunately, was able to be there for a lot of the demonstrations. And with regard to what I personally saw, I saw a piece of steel about this size, which was a ring-shaped. So it had, it was an annulus and about this long. And it was sitting on a table, somewhat like this. And as John was manipulating his energies, whatever they were, suddenly we heard a snap, and the corner of the of this annulus broke off, and some of the pieces are there. There are various pictures that I'm sure Bob is going to have up of this piece that's lying on a piece of plywood with a bunch of powder, it looks like, off the end.
Yeah, I've taken some great photos. George has given complete access to his archive, and there are a plethora of beautiful slide images and all kinds of stuff. So it's a lot of work, but we're getting through it. So.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. So who saw it? At the time that Ferris started interacting with John, I called up a friend who was the head of a company called Venus Scientific in New York State. That man's name was Filippo Galuppi. He's dead now, unfortunately, but he came up because he had supplied a high voltage power supply to John, I think it was, at John's request. And he came up with his girlfriend at the time and later wife, Mary Galuppi. And my friend Alex, and business partner Alex, was there too. And we saw this occur. And unfortunately, at
Did
the
that
time,
change you?
No, because I knew I had seen very strange things.
Oh, okay. So this was just another strange thing.
Well, this was on a different level of strangeness, I must say.
Yeah.
But from what Alex had told me, that's another thing. He said, this happened, this happened, this happened, come on out. And if you're lucky, and we were at the time, this has happened. So this happened.
Wow. Yeah.
In addition, another time I was out, I saw a ferrite disc, much as you'd see at the back of a speaker, for instance, but this was a non-magnetic ferrite disc about, well, that size with a hole in it. It was a ring, and it took off and shook and then dropped to the floor, dropped.
Wow, that's interesting, because one of the only people to replicate John was a guy called Stoyan Sargachev, and he had a piece of ferrite and it bent in a...
Yeah, I can tell you about Stoyan later. He's a good friend of mine. Anyway, so that I hope gives you some aspect of what I was able to see personally. I'm not... those are the only two times when I saw anything significant.
Right.
On occasion, I would see some paper moving around or some foil, which he also liked to put bits of foil to find out where the active area was, because he didn't know in advance where...
Actually, when you were doing your other lab, that when you moved it, you actually put up loads of, was it ping pong balls to try and work out the active area?
That was just prior to the Army INSCOM folk coming up from Los Alamos, and we tried to find out where the active area, or was there an active area above the lab. So all those ping pong balls are above a room that was in a warehouse. It wasn't my lab. It was a warehouse space we rented for
You didn't want it falling down.
That's one way to put it. So some strange things happened, but of course, I'll go to that story later. But during that demonstration, one or actually more of the high voltage transformers blew itself apart, and that scuttled the demonstration, because as usual, these folk come up, okay, we're here for 3 hours, our plane's got to go out, you know, in a couple of hours, so let's see it.
They're used to watching test firings.
That's right. You press a button, bam, off it goes.
Oh, that worked.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway, so that was most disappointing, and very disappointing for John. He was also very hyped before this demo, because if this demo had gone well, maybe the world had changed. I don't know. But I'm sure the military world would have changed.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So you've got a wide range of samples
Yes.
here. What are your favorites? Let's start with those.
Well, one of them is the spiraled up piece of aluminum angle. You can see the angle shape there. And it had a piece of wood not embedded in it, and this is not one of the ones where there's a melding of organic and inorganic, you might say, but it was stuck in there for some reason. I don't know, John had put something together with this screw, and you can see that
it's actually formed with
it's curled a little bit, but there's no scarring, there's no scorching, there's nothing on the wood, and yet this thing would have taken quite some heat to rotate it, or
So certainly above the ignition temperature of
absolutely.
cellulose.
That's right.
Yeah.
Other classic ones. Well, there's that. But if you can see this is perhaps the famous magnetized file. The magnetism has unfortunately disappeared over the 20 years, or no, was it 35 years or something this was done. But when, as you can also see on the video, there were close-ups of this, and this part, when it was together, would start to glow, and then sparks come off, and then the pieces pulled apart. They pulled apart because they were magnetically, say, north-north, south-south, north-north, instead of north-south. So they repelled instead of attracted, which is what they should have done.
This is very interesting because I had a very different journey to you. I really hadn't considered John Hutchison as being anything to do with cold fusion. And I came to the point of seeing these monopole type structures, and when I started interacting with John, I wrote to him one day and I said, I think monopoles are involved. And he says, well, that's interesting. That's exactly what George said.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. I'm saying that's a possibility. It's very strange. Anyway, so another important specimen is this molybdenum rod that Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander supplied to John. He had a duplicate. He kept as a control. Sent this to me. I sent it to John, and the going opinion was that if he could bend this, he's got something.
Right.
If he could bend it without
any clamp
or anything like that. Alex Pizarro saw this in action. I did not. It was laying on John's plywood table, and it just started slowly wiggling. And Alex shouted, "Stop!" and they caught the.
Wow! They actually caught that. Wow!
The wiggle in. Yeah. Anyway.
The thing about molybdenum, it's very strong and it's a very high temperature melting point, isn't it?
Yes,
so
yeah.
Even it's
above 2,000,
very
yeah.
high. So
C. So anyway, those are significant to me. There's the standard kind of brakes that anyone who's interested has seen.
Yeah.
There are unusual kinds of brakes that didn't quite make it. You might say, to pull a piece apart.
I think that's almost more interesting because it still shows that it's bound together. You've got the starting of the fracturing process.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a cut we made, obviously, to take a chunk to analyze it. Yeah. Speaking of analysis, there are all sorts of SEM mounts or pieces that have been polished, mounted in SEM, and polished so for microscopy purposes, which you'll see many examples.
Yeah, I've been looking at negatives and positives.
So also there are rather healthy pieces like this that don't. This is a steel. This is hardened steel, which doesn't show these kinds of this kind of action.
Sort of along the grain boundary effect.
Right. This
of...
just snapped. I've taped it together, but there are cracks. The whole thing comes apart in about 12 pieces. That's why I keep it.
We've got a very good
that.
Photo of that actually in many different angles. So
and there's in this case a magnet. I presume John did something to it, but he gave it to me. In this case, it is magnetized the way it should be, you might say. I don't know what to make of that too much.
Yeah.
There are different kinds of metals. Obviously, we've gone through molybdenum, we've gone through tool steel, we've gone through aluminum, and there's brass, things that have warped a bit, no heat. Showing, and we.
So how do you tell there's no heat?
Generally, because in oxygen, in an atmospheric situation, which all of John's work was, you'd get coloration around the discoloration.
Because copper, it
copper
makes black oxides and so on.
The zinc and
zinc's a white oxide.
So you get a discoloration very clearly. Then there are really interesting bends, tight bends that are really difficult to do without considerable heat.
And it doesn't look like it's kinked on the inside, does it?
Right.
It's like smooth.
It would be an ideal for pipe benders.
Yeah, right.
Man, if I could do this, I didn't have to, fill it with sand, fill a tube with sand, and then incrementally with heat, bend it around, and you'd get stretch marks here. And
this is a big billet, and it's very
stainless,
smoothly deformed.
Yeah. I don't know how to do it otherwise.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you have, that's stainless. This is regular steel.
So this is ferromagnetic. This is not ferromagnetic. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
And I think John has the other half of this. I don't think I have, but it bent around too, like this.
Yeah.
But in this case, it didn't do a nice bend. I don't know whether it's because of the austenitic nature of the steel there, or what the difference was.
I think it's because it's ferromagnetic. The monopoles that you identified here, I have a very small piece of ferromagnetic material, and in the bend, it has these triangular sections where it's opposite, and it looks like it's pushed it apart. I'll share you the images, but I think it can't bind to this in the way that it seems to bind to the ferromagnetic.
The other thing that is significant about this is that if you examine it closely, you can see bits of copper that have come out of solution, in my opinion.
Right, okay, so they were an impurity in the material.
Or an alloy.
Okay.
It could have been an alloy. And
did you test the other end to see if it has any?
Yes, we can see there's a cut there and there's a cut there.
And
here there's couldn't see any.
Okay.
Or any blobs. I mean, it was an alloy with copper, but the alloying elements did not suddenly sort of come out of solution and congeal into blobs of the alloy element. And this is what we found. I think there are other examples of it.
So you mean it doesn't separate into copper? What does it do?
Well,
or it comes out as copper?
It comes out as copper. In this case, there's probably molybdenum and some other alloying elements that are certainly impossible to see with the naked eye if they're well alloyed. I mean, if this is a well done bar, the alloys mixed in with the iron and carbon or whatever else, but only under circumstances that I'm holding here have I ever seen blobs of the alloying element.
See it.
Yes, actually somehow migrate out of solution and into a blob that is big enough to see.
Right.
And that happens at the grain boundaries, as we found in some of the analyses of these things too.
Okay, so what you've done when you're doing these analyses, you've taken a piece and you've done a section and polished that section.
Correct, as example.
Okay, and then on the grain boundaries within the crystals within that section that you've cut and polished, you see these come out of solution.
Yes, in some cases, yeah.
And do you think, because it seems to be like affecting the electrons in some way such that they don't hold them latticed together in an ordinary way,
that maybe
maybe you've got melting points at different levels, and so it gets more affected either because it's more conductive or whatever. I mean,
could be.
That's
I'm
interesting.
holding judgment on the how. I'm just can report on what we see or we saw analysis-wise. These were done 25, 30 years ago. Then there's the classical flowering and a piece of quartz, I believe, that was melted. It doesn't have sharp.
Right. Yeah.
Sharp edges. There's a particular good example of it being melted on a corner.
So this is it a drawn aluminium billet?
Yes.
So
I think
it would
drawn.
actually have crystal grains going
and
in a line.
And you can see roughly, and that's why it opened up this way. That was the easy way to open.
So when I've seen I have some samples that have got some similar features, and I've kind of likened it to this, where we've seen in different technology, which is obviously the same thing, it seems to go along the crystal boundaries and form these layers. Now, if they are monopole and then monopole, it's kind of pushing itself apart.
It could be, yeah, it could be the same thing that happened here. Nothing to do with magnetism.
Well, no, something pushing apart.
Yes, maybe electromagnetic force of some, not, I should say, not purely like permanent magnetism.
Yeah, right.
I think it's more subtle than that. So that sort of sums up very quickly the samples that I have.
I notice you have a brass sample here, and it looks a little bit similar. We're going to have a look at that.
Yeah, it's a sheet of brass.
Yeah, to what we've observed recently.
Yep. So anyway, that sort of sums up the the major things that I have.
If you were to pick a favourite, I know I asked you at the beginning, what would it be? I mean, you've
so
handled this one a lot because it's the typical example of the planar fracturing.
Yeah. I don't really. It's hard to tell what a favorite is. I suppose it's a toss-up between the so-called monopoles and this guy, but John there's so many other things that John has done with that is attendant on John, like lighting effects and weird ways that viscid and inviscid material flow, and obviously all the lifting phenomena as well. So,
well,
hard to
thank you
tell.
very much, George, for running through your samples. I'm hoping to get some really nice macro photography of them for the book.
Yeah,
and
excellent.
It's been a real pleasure to be here. He's an excellent host. So,
Okay,
thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Bob.